So, I want you to understand that this can be a trigger moment. 2012 or 2011, November of 2011, I found out I was pregnant with my second son. He was the most difficult pregnancy I have ever been through. Now, at 22 weeks, they found out that I had a hernia. So, right in my pelvis. And it was so bad that they had to do the surgery immediately. They worried if they were to wait until after the pregnancy that I could have torn the hernia further and further damage my intestine line, and possibly have to take some of my intestines out because of it. So 22 weeks, I had the surgery done. At 24 weeks, I went into premature labor. They were able to stop it. They gave me a shot for steroids. I was constantly on medication to prevent the premature labor up until my due date, which was July 30th. And he was born July 30th, 31st, 2 a.m. that morning. It was a very tragic, it was a very devastating pregnancy. I wanted an epidural. The doctor refused to give me an epidural at 3 centimeters dilated, and convinced me that there was no possible way that I would, or tried to convince me that there was no possible way that I would be 10 centimeters dilated within the next hour to 2 hours. Now, my first son, I went to the hospital at 2 o'clock in the morning. They told me there is absolutely no way I was going to have my son within the next 2 weeks. I was back at 6 o'clock the next day, that same day, and I was 6 centimeters dilated. They had broken my water, and so, no, not 6 o'clock, about 3 o'clock I went in. They broke my water, and about an hour and a half later, or hour later or so, he was fully delivered. And so I was convinced that, this one was going to go just as quick, because your first pregnancy is always the longest pregnancy, or first delivery is always the longest delivery. So I decided that I was going to prepare for that. I wanted the epidural when they broke my water, so that way I didn't have to feel the pain. I was having a lot of back labor pain. So I was very concerned about how much it was really going to hurt. And they had forced me to deliver my son not only without the epidural, but semi-unconscious. I was in and out of consciousness. I was so weak that I only got to hold my son for 2 minutes before I actually passed out. And then they had woke me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So about 2.5, 3 hours later, they woke me back up and handed me my baby and said, "Here you go, this is your problem." And, I had to fight with them to check him for yellow jaundice, which he did have. He did have a very light case, but without going untreated, it would have been more serious. So about a few weeks later, I was still having back pain, and a lot of back pain, a lot of hip pain. It was very difficult for me to get in and out of bed. In August, I went in for my follow-up and found out that my pap smear came back abnormal. Not for any STIs or anything like that. It was just abnormal. So they went in, did a biopsy, and found out that I had high dysplasia. Now, high dysplasia is I had low dysplasia, then I had high dysplasia when they did the biopsy. High dysplasia is pre-cervical cancer, so they immediately set me up for a LEEP, which I did awake. They do local anesthetics for the LEEP. Now, I had just had a baby. I had a traumatic delivery along with a traumatic pregnancy. I found out I had cancer, or pre-cancer, and I knew that mother instinct that there was something wrong with my child. My child screamed all day long. No, our food, diaper change, cuddles could comfort this baby. And babies are supposed to have a soft spot at the top of his head. His head was very odd shape when he was born, and they said, it will, fill out better later because they do squish a little bit when they come out. And his was just longer. Like, heads are usually round, and his was more oval shape. And I just had that mother instinct that there was something wrong. At this point in time, I'm living up north, Lancaster, New Hampshire. I got dumped just left in a house by myself with this newborn baby. No way to pay for him, no way to pay for myself. I had TANF, I had food stamps, no vehicle, no license, no way to get around. The closest store was walking distance, almost an hour away. The only time I saw other people was when my father-in-law would drop the boys off for me to babysit them, and that was it. I was completely secluded into this deep depression with nobody there to help me deal with these things. It was very, very traumatizing. So I called my mom up, begged her to let me come home, begged her to come up north, pick me up, pick up my child, and let's go home. So she did. She came November 21st, 2012, picked me up, brought me down to Manchester, New Hampshire. I had immediately scheduled a pediatric appointment for Terrence to figure out what was going on. That first appointment, just by looking at him, she said, I believe he has what's called craniocystinosis. She also told me that this disease will kill my son if not treated immediately. It is a genetic disorder where the skulls of the brain fuses together too soon. The doctors should have been able to catch this on the ultrasound before he was even born, so he could have been treated immediately. At this point, he is, I want to say 3-4 months old. So we immediately set up an appointment with a doctor up in Lebanon, New Hampshire. His name was Dr. Bragna, and a plastic surgeon. Now, a week later, immediately got him in, or it was like a week, 2 weeks later, brought him up there. they confirmed what she had thought, that he had craniosynostosis and that he needed to have immediate surgery. So I went back down to Manchester, waited for the phone call, got told, okay, your appointment for the surgery is December 21st. Your child will be there 5 to 7 days. So at this point, my baby, 4 months old, is going in for severe surgery. They are cutting his head open, ear to ear, and they are going to remove pieces of his skulls and put in dissolvable plates to help his brain to grow, or his skull to grow, so that way his brain could grow. At this point, there was so much pressure on his brain that they didn't know what the damage would be, what his outcome would be. They didn't know if my son would ever be able to learn, if he would ever be able to speak, if he would ever be able to just be a kid. So December 21st, my grandmother and my mother bring us up north. December 20th, they bring us up north. And we stay there overnight because the operation's at 5 o'clock in the morning. So we stay at the housing complex that they have on post. They have, it's completely free. You only pay for your food. So at the time period, I didn't really have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of resources. So I went in the next day and put my son through the surgery. It was the longest 8 hours of my life, waiting to find out if he would come out alive. And at that point, October 30th, so July 31st is when I found out that, or July 31st is when I went through the traumatic delivery. About, I want to say sometime in August is when everybody had left the house. August, September. I was left by myself, postpartum, with a newborn baby that wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, wouldn't do anything. All he did is cry because of the pain that he had in his skull. I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know what to do to help him. August, I found out that my pap was abnormal. October 31st, Halloween, I found out that I had pre-cervical cancer. November, I had the surgery to have it removed and had a follow-up to find out that it did come back. And November, I found out that my son had a genetic disease that could kill him. In December, he underwent 8 hours of intensive skull surgery to repair the skull. One nick to his brain could damage him for life. I took pictures and sent them to the family and kept him updated on his status. December 24th at 8 o'clock, we got the okay to go home. My dad drove 2 hours with my uncle all the way up to Lebanon, picked us up, and brought us home so we could be home Christmas Day. it was the most hardest time period that I could possibly go through. I didn't have my other son. He was living with his Nana. I was trying to just get my life back together. I had left the father at the time because it was just a abusive relationship, mentally, not physically. And I was trying to just put my life back. And then you find out that you could possibly die and that your kid is dying. So at that point in time, you're like, okay, I need to focus on this. And my niece, she had seizures, really bad seizures. And we decided, my mom and I, that the best thing for her was for me to take her from her mom, which most of our family didn't agree upon, but my sister wasn't mentally stable to handle my niece's disabilities and epilepsy or anything like that. So now I have 2 sick kids to take care of. And it was, having them together was the best thing for them. They were 2 peas in a pod. Anytime you saw one, you saw the other. They were always together. It was like his big sister. And, them having each other and helping each other get through their issues, really helped me get through mine. I had a couple of friends that I was able to talk to about these things and just how to get through them and how to process them. My friend Gary was great. He helped me through a lot of it. He would just come over really late at night, sit down, talk to me on my steps. The doorsteps were right next to the living room that we would sleep in. So I would be right there. I could watch them from the window and always keep an eye on them. And, we're 3 people sharing a living room while my mom and stepdad slept in the bedroom. So you have 5 people, sometimes 6 if there was somebody else staying there. And a 1-bedroom apartment, but we made it work. And shortly after my Terrence's surgery and getting Zoe, my sister calls me. She goes, I need you to come get me. I'm like, why? What's going on? So we knew that her boyfriend was abusive, but really you can't force people to leave those situations. You just have to wait for them to be ready to leave. We talked about it many times. This day she says, you just gotta come get me. It's getting bad. I can't handle it anymore. I can't handle the stress. She was sick. She got an infection in her breast while she was breastfeeding. She just couldn't handle it. So me and my mom and a couple of our friends, we went up there and we got her. And it was a very stressful situation. And with everything that I had going on at the time, there was a lot of stress going on. I was still hitting with either low or high dysplasia, getting checked every 3 months, making sure that it stays low or it goes back to low. It doesn't progress any further than what it is. At this point, I've been told that the scar tissue was so bad that I probably, without help, would never have a child again. So I'm dealing with this, and my sister calls me, who just had a baby. She had her baby about December, I want to say. She calls me right after Christmas. Yeah, she had her baby December 12th, I want to say. She called me after Christmas, I think March, right around her birthday, February, March. We went up there, we got her, and he tries to attack her in front of us. And all you see is my mom, full side, just slams him into the wall and protects her child. Like, that's what a mother's supposed to do. So we get her out of there, take the child, both kids, her oldest, Jonathan, and Kayla. We get them out of there, and it's just a tragic time for me. And I guess I've dealt with it in some ways. My son that had the surgery is now 8 years old, the smartest kid in his class. He's in second grade doing third grade work, working with his brother doing fifth grade work on the weekends, because they're just such bright children. I have custody now of all of my children. My niece actually stayed with my mother because she had medical tests being done. So when I got married and the Army relocated us, we felt it would be best for my niece to stay there and finish the medical treatment, which I'm grateful I did, because a lot of our paperwork moving over to the military had gotten lost, which we didn't want for her. We couldn't risk losing that paperwork. She just had so many medical problems that we just couldn't take the risks, and we didn't know what moving would do to her. She was just very emotional, had high anxiety. She just really reminded me of an autistic child. And my mom further did the tests, and we found out she had a learning disability due to a hearing problem that she has. And she can hear what it's saying, what you're saying, but it doesn't connect to her brain and then comes back. Like, it doesn't register in her brain of what you're actually saying to her. And that caused a lot of anxiety. She had a lot of damage from being in a car accident and having seizures. Her seizures could last from 5 to 10 minutes every time she had one. And she didn't just have grand mal seizures where your body spazzes. She had petit mals as well. It's called complex epilepsy when you have both of them. So there was severe damage to her brain as well, which made it very hard for her to learn and to process situations. So we really wanted to work on getting her better, so that way she can try to have as normal as life as she possibly could. So this was the right decision for her, and we came to Kansas, where we are now. We're stationed here for another 2 years. We've been here for about 2 years now. It'll be 2 years in June, so a total of 4 years in Kansas. We're hoping to go to Fort Bragg next, but who knows? The military decides. But it's just 2012 and 2013 was the most difficult year for me. And it wasn't until 6 years later that I found out actually what was wrong with me. I had hip dysplasia from delivering my son, because his head was so odd shaped that when I delivered him, my hips literally dislocated further than what they were supposed to, because he couldn't fit through the birth canal. But they had forced me to deliver him without any assistance at all. That when he got stuck, my body's solution for it was to just dislocate my hips further, which caused me severe damage in my hips and lower back. It actually caused me to have sciatica, and the trauma for everything that had happened caused me to have what's called fibromyalgia. My nerves do not fire properly, which causes me a lot of pain all over my body, which also causes me to have depression and anxiety, which I already had beforehand because of a traumatic childhood. But now it's 2020. Both of my kids are grown up, or not grown up all the way, but almost 11 and 7 years old. I have a beautiful daughter that I was told I would never be able to have without help, and I conceived her naturally. I have a wonderful husband. I have animals that love us. But most of all, I'm stronger for what I've been through. I've survived cancer. I've survived abuse. I've survived so many things that I am still processing and learning how to deal with them and how to deal with how they affect me in my life. But in the end, I survived those, and it made me a stronger woman today than I was when I was 15 or 16 years old. And being almost 30 now, yeah, I would love to change a lot of the things that I've been through, but without going through them, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be the strong woman that I am today. I wouldn't be the person that my children look up to, or the person that they love so much. And I'm grateful for that.